Good morning and happy Sunday. It's Halloween week. We are coming to you from St. Vrain State Park here in Colorado, just about 30 miles north of the city. My mommy and I, the Gypsy and the Witch. So yesterday they had us all decorate for Halloween and provide candy for the kids that are camping here and for the surrounding neighborhood. So it was really, really fun. And we're just waiting now that we're all decorated and we got this beautiful table all set up and we got the trailer decorated and we got bags and bags of candy and we're just waiting. My mom and I were playing around with me as a gypsy coming out ready for the little children to come and get their candy. So here's a little snippet of that. I'm ready for the little children to come and get some candy from me. Right after I eat my Butterfinger. And finally, here they come, crossing the fields, and they just came in droves. They were so adorable. Here's a little witch, little mini witch, and she came running right up to my mom, and she's like, "You're a witch just like me." It was really sweet. And yes, we had mermaids and princesses, and look, this gingerbread boy was hysterical, and I'm assuming his brother, the Godzilla, and dad. Just really, really good fun. Good turnout. Here's another dinosaur. And I just love these little girls. They're so cute. Yeah, everyone was having a really good time. We got really lucky with the weather. We started out at this gorgeous day, and as the day went on, the wind picked up. It was crazy. Here's the clouds rolling in. We are about to hit 4 days of snow, so we will be tucked in tight the next few days. But yeah, the kids were just so fun. We had little stormtroopers and a little mini Yoda who said "Twinkle tweet." It was just so darn cute. And this little girl, I was obsessed with how the sun was coming through her little witch dress and her scary big brother. It was so fun. And this girl, I think she was the corpse bride or something like that, but she was just lovely. It was just so fun to see the little kids' faces. Look at this little girl. She was just full of joy in her little candy basket. But inevitably, if you know anything about Colorado, the saying here is, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. And the clouds are rolling in and boom, we had this crazy amount of wind that just picked up out of nowhere. It was kind of like a Halloween thing. I felt like Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz, and we were looking for a storm cellar. We had those decorations down in like 10 minutes flat. Got into the trailer, had dinner, and were treated to this beautiful sunset. So that was a really fun day yesterday, but it is Sunday, so it is time to get started on our project. So now that you've got the base of your bag done, we are going to do the background embroidery. So what you'll need for this week is the ribbon that you edged your bag with, embroidery flosses A, B, C, and D. So we're going to start with these flyleaf stems here. I started it, but I've left this blank area so I can show you how to do this. And we're going to start with yarn A. My recommendation for that is DMC floss, and we're going to use 3 strands. If you got the Whitish Wedding, which is the kit that I'm demonstrating on, I included the sparkly yarn as thread A. Use this single. If you're using DMC floss, you want to make sure that you're splitting that so you're using 3 strands. But this is done singly. It's a little bit thinner, but it makes a big impact because it's sparkly. But if you're not using a kit and you're just trying to find yarns from home, DMC floss is great. And basically, you're just going to need a couple needles for this. One thin enough for all the embroidery flosses, and then a bigger one for thread B when we go to make lazy daisies with that thread, which is actually thin lace yarn is what I recommended for that. Okay, so we're going to start with the smaller needle and floss A. Make a quilter's knot, and what that looks like is take your threaded needle and the other end of the thread and wrap it a few times, 1, 2, 3. Hold the knot in your thumb and first finger, and then just slide the yarn down And it'll make a knot at the end there. Make sure that when you're starting your yarn from the inside, you're not coming up through this hole, because that's obviously not going to hold the knot. Just come up through something that is sturdy and that will hold that knot in place. About 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch, and parallel. Insert the needle, and then come out below them and in between them. And then make sure that the needle is over the thread, and that makes a little Y. And now what you're going to want to do, it's easier for me to turn this upside down just to get a good handle on it. So I'm holding from, as you can see, inside the bag. Is you're going to come from where the yarn is exiting out, the thread's exiting out, another parallel line, and then come about 1/4 of an inch below and in between those two. And make sure that when you pull through, that your needle is over that thread. And now you can alternate sides. You can go 2 on one and then alternate and then 2 on another. Just sort of work it so that it looks like kind of a wavy organic stem coming down. So I'll do one on the other side. So parallel from here, insert the needle, and then come out below and in between them. And just eyeing this up is fine. We're gonna, as you can see, we're gonna put lazy daisies with thread B, and then we're gonna do French knots with C, so it'll look real full by the time it's said and done. And I recommended about 4.5 yards. It's basically half a skein of DMC for this, especially if you're splitting it in two. If you got a whitish wedding kit, I gave you 9 yards of this, so you should have plenty to work many stems. You can see how I've spaced them apart. I've got another stem coming into another, just so that it's not a whole bunch of like one single stems coming up. So work that all the way around the bag. And as far as where to stop, I didn't go all the way down to the bottom just because I know we're going to be putting a bunch of flowers and little spirals all along this bottom. So I basically stopped kind of where we stopped our increases. You'll see a specific line for that, about down to here. But you can take them a little bit farther, vary those up. Where you stop, where you start. There's no exact placement. You can be very free and just let this happen all organically. Okay, so work those fly stitches in thread A all the way around the bag, and then we'll come back and we'll do these lazy daisies. Okay, so then once you have all of your fly stitches on and designated, we are going to work lazy daisies down the stems. Now for here, what I've been doing is I want to make sure that knot is tucked away. So I'm going to go into an open space of the bag rather than just awkwardly reaching in every time. It's nice to just kind of start in your hand how you're going to stitch. So I'm going into a hole, and then when I take the thread, that little knot will get caught behind the stitches there, the tight stitches. So you can see that I exited out of a lower part of one of the Y stitches. Just on the other side of it, you're going to insert your needle and then make the point come out to just past the end of that little branch there. Okay, and again, your needle is going to come over the thread and you're going to pull it out. And you'll notice that little loop forms on either side of that stem, which is just what you want. Then, to lock it in place, take your needle over the loop and insert it just on the other side now to scooch into the next branch. Just orient your needle so that you're coming out at the bottom of the next little branch there. Okay, and then just on the other side of this stem, sort of even with where it's coming out of. And some of these will be shorter and longer. That's okay. That's what you want. And then, of course, over that loop to lock it in place. And then you're sort of burying the yarn in between and under the crochet. So it sort of takes care of itself. And again, we are going to be lining this bag so you can make it as messy as you want to on the inside. Okay, so I'm coming out of this part of the stem, on this side of the stem, coming on the other side, exiting out at the top of the stem, over this yarn, and slowly pull it. Okay, now to go down to the next one, orient myself so it's easy. Over that thread to the one side. You know, you can take some of the yarn from the previous crochet and just sort of fill that gap. Okay. And I'll do this one next. So I'm going to go over that loop on this side of the stitch. Either side, whichever is easier. Whichever one it comes out first is what I do. Lay the yarn parallel to that, which makes it a little bit easier, and hold it down with your thumb on the other side of the stem, and then just come out just above it. And pull it through. And you're going to work that on every stem of every flyleaf chain you've done. So throw in some Netflix because this takes a minute, but it is really fun and really beautiful. And pretty soon all of your flyleaf stems will look like this. Once you have all of your lazy daisies on with thread B, you're going to go to thread C, which is a 6-strand floss. To split them apart, you're going to just kind of find where you can pull 2 threads. I've got 4 on this side, 2 on this side, and then just slowly tear it apart. If you work really slow, you get most of it. And the trick is to pull down on the main piece. And then set the 4 strand aside. And on your smaller needle, thread that and make a quilter's knot. And you want about an 18-inch, 20-inch piece here. 1, 2, 3. Squeeze the knot in your thumb and your first finger. Don't let go of it like I just did. See if I can grab that knot. Yep. Okay, and there's a little knot at the end. So I start at the top, and again, just push your needle into a nice big open space and come up where you want your first French knot. Go, doesn't really matter, go here. Just make sure that the knots are in solid stitches, not in holes, because obviously that's not going to hold. Now, to make a French knot, I hold the yarn in my hand, and I'm going to spin the needle around this thread 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. The trick of a French knot is to take the yarn you have in the thread you have in your non-dominant hand and spin it under the needle. Then insert the needle really, really close to where it's coming out of and hold this yarn taut. Okay, and here, I really don't even need to reach inside the bag here because I'm just going through just a few layers and coming out where I want that next French knot. Keep this taut so that when you pull it, it turns into a nice little berry looking knot. Okay, so then the next knot that I'm going to do after this one, I'll want maybe right here. So I angle it so that I can easily take the needle and push it out to where I want to come out next. So here it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Take my thread and push it under the needle. Insert the needle real close to where I was coming out of. And while still holding this thread, exit the needle out where you want your next berry. Pull it through slowly. Okay. So I'll do one more and turn the bag to where I can easily come out, maybe right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The thread goes under the needle. Needle goes right into close where I was coming out, and then maybe my next knot is going to be right here on this stem. And then just remember, hold this yarn taut while you pull through. And then you'll get this beautiful little knot. Okay, so work those. I say like in a space like this, maybe I'll do 3, maybe 1 or 2 here, 1 here. Just sort of clusters down the stem until you get something that looks like this. So again, it's 2 strands of DMC. You can do bright, bright colors for berries. With whitish wedding, of course, you're going to see me stay mostly tone on tone because just that's the look that I'm going for this specific colorway. But most of the kits that I put together, I put a bright little color in for C so that you can have some nice bright berries coming out from your vine. Okay, so once you have all of your little French knots on, we're going to go ahead and couch pieces of this ribbon. So you want to take like a 6/8 inch piece of ribbon, tie a knot on one end, and then just decide where you want the tops of these. Now, at the tops of each of these ribbons, we're going to do, like 11 or 12 of them, and we're going to put on the top either the beaded buds or the fabric agami. And so just be mindful of that as far as like where your ribbon ends. And all I'm doing right here is I'm just popping this ribbon through one of the big holes. I've tied a knot, although obviously that knot wasn't big enough. But the knot doesn't really matter. The knot just sort of keeps it in place while we couch over it. And the couching is sort of a 2-step process. So thread your smaller needle with 3 strands of thread D, which is DMC floss once again. So as always, start in a big hole and come up just on one side of that ribbon there, so that it holds in place. Make sure you're through a stitch. And the first time, go over the ribbon, catching the threads in the back, the purse threads. Then this time, what I like to do, just to make sure it's nailed in place, is just pierce the ribbon just a little bit and come down about 1/2 inch. And then couch over this piece. And so what you want to do is angle this ribbon. You can twist it a little bit and just sort of make it come down in between these branches. You can even pop it, in this little guy. It's too obvious if you put one in between each one. You want to put like maybe we'll go one here and then another smaller one here. And I'll show you at the end where I've placed them and what I've done. Okay, but again, it's go around the ribbon and stay pretty close. Come out to where you're coming in. And then the second time, pierce the ribbon. Now I want this ribbon to come down sort of in between here. So I'm going to start to angle it this way. So I'm going to turn this around, and when I go in and pierce this part of the ribbon, I'm just going to exit out, like I said, about 1/2 inch away. You want all of your threads completely out of the way because we're not making any actual lockdown stitches. We're just locking down this ribbon. Okay, and maybe I'll put a little twist in it this time. And I'm just picking up the purse threads behind the ribbon. You notice I'm going the other direction this time. That's okay. Just whatever's easiest for your hands to do. There's no right or wrong here. Until it ends somewhere down here. Okay, so we're just doing basically 2 couching stitches. Then, let's see, let's pretend we've got that all done. Pierce that again. Then in between them, what you're going to do is work another little fly stitch. Okay, so I'll just show you really quick the second part of this. You want to exit your needle so that it's parallel to the top stitch. And then on the other side, same distance, insert the needle. Then come out directly in the center of the ribbon, and this just locks that ribbon down even more. And we are working a fly stitch here, so make sure that the yarn is behind the needle, and then pull your needle out. Lock that stitch in place by just inserting the needle back into the ribbon. Okay, underneath that loop, or over that loop I should say, and then pop the needle back out parallel to this stitch here. Parallel on the other side, about the same distance apart, and then come out in the middle of the ribbon, in the middle of these 2 stitches, over the yarn, and then back down into the ribbon. So that each ribbon, and remember, do about 11 or 12, something like that, all around the purse. Make sure that you end them, the tops of them are in various places, because as I said, we're going to do the beaded bud and the fabricami on the tops of each of these, and we want to make sure that they're not all, in one same line. Like the beaded bud might be really pretty right here, so we would end the ribbon here and come down. And don't be afraid to come down and just behind it. And like I said, I'll do all the ribbons and then I'll come back and show you the placement of them, just so you can kind of get a good idea as you work. Okay, so to finish out this lesson, go ahead and grab a bigger needle, one that will hold the ribbon, and a tiny needle, one that we can put the beads on these little stems. So one of the things, I'm going to show you a little trick. One of the things that you can do when you're down at the bottom of a ribbon stem is place that ribbon on a needle, okay? And when you get down to a bottom, I want this ribbon to kind of come up behind this and up through this stem, maybe to end right here, because you see I've got another ribbon right here. Maybe go just here and stay in the bigger holes, because we're not trying to bring the ribbon through all these tight crochet stitches, right? So we can couch this, come up through here, and we'll maybe end it right there. And just leave the ribbon on the inside for now. We'll couch real quick over this V shape. I'm just picking up the purse stitches from behind. And the first one, I'm just picking up the bag stitches behind. Come out again. And then this time just stab the ribbon just to hold it in place. And just continue as normal. Another ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch or so. Come up. Stab the ribbon just on the side. And then travel behind all the stitches to here. And then just couch the rest of it in place. To weave in the ends, just travel behind all the stitches. To weave every end of your thread in. Okay, and then to clip the end, just pull down on it a little bit. clip it. Obviously, try not to clip your bag. And then pull it, and then that will just sink into the backs of the stitches. Okay, so the beads that go on the top of each little branch, we're using a size 11 seed bead. They're really tiny. So before you go through the pain of threading a teeny tiny little needle with a thread that matches the background, you know, normally in applique we would match the thread to the applique, but in beading, we want to match the thread as close as we can to the background. So just make sure that your needle is small enough to go through these beads. Then go ahead and thread your needle. Okay, so again, we're just going to come up at the end of each little branch that we made with these fly stitches. Okay, place the bead, pick up a couple purse stitches, and make sure that you're getting the top of that little branch. And then go through the bead again so that every bead has 2 threads going through it. And you could use beading thread here, but honestly, there's not going to be a lot of wear and tear on these beads, so just regular sewing thread is just fine for this purpose. And come up just on the side of the next branch. Pick up your bead and go through. In your kit, I gave you the same amount of 3 different size 11 seed beads. The other thing we're going to be doing with this is putting the bead, making a little bead wrap for the ends of your handles here. So you can choose whatever color you want on here. You'll have enough to do this and make those bead handles. So you're perfectly fine with whatever color you choose. And then just exit your needle to the next branch. Pick up a bead. I'll have to clip that. I think I pulled my other little knot through. You can see that, but we'll take care of that later. No biggie. Okay, and then just put the bead on, go through it again, and then exit out where you want your next bead to come out of. Okay, very simple and very worthy of a Netflix binge. So enjoy this process. So here it is, all finished, part 2 of the Gypsy Satchel. And the scrap pile, don't pretend that that is not getting gorgeous. We're going to have some fun with that after the project. So keep those little scraps together. And then as promised, I wanted to show you another version of this bag in case you wanted to make a bigger one, a crossbody bag, use up some fabrics to quilt. This is the quilted version of that. And I showed you that in the intro video, but I wanted to sort of talk you through how I made it. And this PDF will be available on my website and myhrequilts.com. So you'll have the PDF. It's really easy to do. But I just wanted to give you a little, a snippet of what I did and how I went about this bag. So I took a bunch of scrap fabrics and took out my featherweight. Just all you needed is straight line sewing for this, and did some crazy patchwork. That's pretty easy to do. You basically just sew one piece to another, and they can be completely random shapes, sizes, what have you. Just sew one edge, maybe trim it up, sew a piece to another edge, almost like you're doing a log cabin, but you don't really have to follow that format. And this is what you'll come up with, is the 3 pieces where I instruct in the pattern to make and I give you the sizes for these pieces in the pattern. So this is just sort of an addendum to that pattern so you can see what it looks like. This is in no way a tutorial on how to make this bag. I'm just talking it through. The sewing the strap onto the bag, I just wanted to give you a few pictures on how to do this. The biggest trick I can say is don't try to sew this strap onto the back side in a U. You know, don't go from like top to the corner and then try to turn it in your machine and, you know, sew across the bottom, try to turn it in your machine. It just doesn't work. What you really want to do is just think one side at a time and stop where you're at 1/4 of an inch, so that when you turn your pieces and you can lay the pieces flat, that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance will be able to lay flat. If you sew it all the way down to the bottom, then you're sort of locked in, and then you've got a bunch of bulk in there. So sew from the top to the bottom, but leave that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Tie a knot, take the project out, reorient it so that you can sew across from the bottom, start at the 1/4 inch and end at a 1/4 inch. So always leave that 1/4 of an inch space. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. If not, just email me and I can talk it through or whatever. But again, that PDF can be found at myhrequilts.com. And here's a fun idea I had with the scraps. In the campsite next to me was this really cute little, I don't know what it was, like just something to hold flowers in, or maybe it's for some bird to nest in. I'm not really sure, but I thought I'm going to put these scraps in here and leave it for the birds so that they can make their nests with. That's always a fun thing to do with scraps too. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me again on Gypsy Satchel Part 2. I'll be watching for your pictures on the Facebook group Mandala Unplugged, watching for your questions. I'll be standing by. Have a wonderful week. Happy Halloween. And we'll see you next week for Part 3 of the Gypsy Satchel.